I always had felt like I've been bouncing around in vet med, going from here to here to here. And I always wanted to find a spot to stay, really like find my niche, find my path in vet med. And I just kept feeling like I just kept missing it.
Welcome to Vet Life Reimagined. Our guest needed to reimagine what a veterinary career could be for her. Jennifer Brown knew veterinary medicine was right, but couldn't quite find her Goldilocks spot in it. Jennifer is a credentialed veterinary technician who tried emergency medicine, lab animal medicine, general practice, and nothing quite seemed to be a spot where she wanted to stay long term. But fellow vet med podcasters showed her that there were many possibilities in veterinary medicine, and a personal experience allowed her to see a gap in supporting pets and pet parents that she was excited to fill. We discussed finding your home in vet med, applying your skills in different avenues, and why bringing hospice care is important to our industry. So let's get to the conversation with Jennifer Brown. When did you know you wanted to get into veterinary medicine?
Oh man. Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I can't really pinpoint when I knew I wanted to be in vet med. I've always known that working with animals is the only thing I can do. I tried once in my early 20s, I think, to work outside of animals, and it didn't go well. I lasted 6 months, and that was it. So I kind of after high school, it's what am I doing with my life? I don't really know. And I ended up finally deciding mid-20s that I wanted to go to tech school. But before that, I was going to dog training classes with my grandma. She taught basic obedience. She competed with her dogs in obedience. She had therapy dogs. She worked with kids in schools. And so I was really exposed to animals from a very young age. And then we had tons. We had a little 2-acre place when I grew up, and we had sheep and chickens and dogs and cats and birds and all the things. My parents kind of let me hear lots of animals. And I was always super involved with all of them. My mom was going through pictures recently and found a picture that I'd taken of a puncture wound on the back of one of our dog's legs, because I wanted to document it. And I was so interested in what was happening with it. And so I probably, if I had listened to myself, I would have known then, but it took me a little bit to figure it out.
You were before your time already doing AI documentation on wounds and
yeah, totally. Yeah.
And you talked about your parents really letting you have a lot of animals and experience. And it does sound like animals were a big part of your growing up. You mentioned your grandmother and doing dog training. You mentioned to me earlier that you started working with sled dogs and you were in 4-H.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the sled dog thing, for some reason, I'm just fascinated by sled dogs. And that's the one time I think somebody could probably convince me to go to Alaska at any time of the year would be promising me a ride with the sled dog team. So how did that come into play?
Yeah, that was actually what started my whole 4-H career. I was at our local small town feed store with my mom and saw a dog sledding harness. I think it was a weight pulling harness that was for sale there. And so I think my mom probably asked the owner of the pet store about it. And they said, oh, well, that's just local family. They have sled dogs and she makes harnesses and sells them. So I was like, oh, that's so cool. I want to get involved and I want to learn about it. And we had a dud lab at the time. And I mean dud she was supposed to be the pick of the litter of my grandparents. They bred hunting and field labs, and she was supposed to be my dad's hunting dog, the best of the best, and she wouldn't retrieve. She hated water. So she was the sweetest thing, but just an absolute dud of what a lab is supposed to be. So we got in contact with them, and I tried to do weight pulling and dog sledding with her, because I was like, I've got to do this. This is amazing. And again, bless my parents. They were like, okay, cool. Let's do it. Let's see what this is all about. So that led into my first husky, who I'm on my 4th husky now. So I'm a husky person through and through. But I don't remember how many years, but 3 or 4 years at least, with sled dogs and going to short races as a kid. It worked out the family that had the sled dogs in town also had a daughter who is my age. So we became friends, and we're still friends now, she's my longest time friend. My mom would take me to the sled dog races, and they would be there. And so I had the mentorship. I had all of the support that I could have asked for, especially in my parents, because then they let me get another sled dog after the first one. It was always just a hobby. We started a sled dog project in 4-H with my club. We were the only ones who ever made posters for it, but we got 4-H to let us make it an official project. It was so much fun. I learned so much from it and so much about really the relationship the mushers have to have with their dogs is really, really incredible. And that's, like looking back on it now, reflecting on that, that's like, they really rely on each other. And that musher really has to trust those dogs, which is really, it's pretty amazing seeing that, especially when you see those teams of 10, 12, 14 dogs and they all work as a team with their mushers. Pretty cool.
It really is. And, now that you have me thinking about it too, just kind of fast forwarding just a little bit into your career, because I do know what comes next. The human animal bond really is also really big and important for your career. And, what you've discovered is a sweet spot for you. So I think that is kind of unique that you can reflect and identify some of those elements like early on in as you are discovering what you want to do for the rest of your life and what to make a career into. So you said that was a big part of kind of getting into the veterinary side. I know that you got married young and you started continuing to work with dogs and in daycares, but you did eventually find your way to a vet clinic. So what was kind of that build up to getting into a vet clinic and really in a young age start to understand, this feels like a good place for me?
Yeah. I had been working for a couple of years at a dog daycare, and there was an ER clinic where I lived that I drove past fairly frequently because of where I lived. And I always thought, oh man, that would be so cool to work there, even though as a receptionist. And so I applied probably within the first couple of years that I worked at the daycare for a reception position and didn't even get an interview. And there was, I think it was my grandma had a friend who worked in a vet clinic. Of course, she was surrounded by dog people, and she was a vet tech. And my grandma kept telling me, she's like, you've got to go meet with her. You've got to go meet with her. Just go ask her what it's about. And I was like, yeah, grandma. Yeah. Early 20s, right? And I finally did. And I kind of ruminated on it for a while. It wasn't like meet with her. And then I was like, oh, that's it. I'm doing it. I kind of ruminated on it a little while and just kind of thought about it. And I was finding myself also being very interested in research and especially in infectious disease research, which might have been like an alternate path for me at some point. I thought it was going to be like, if I wasn't in vet med, I probably would be doing something with infectious disease. But so I thought, it'd be really cool to be in research. My mom had worked in microbiology when I was growing up, so I kind of had a little bit of exposure to it. And the tech school in my town at the time had a lab animal technician associate degree that was part of a grant. And I thought, that would be really cool. So I went to an information session and I thought, okay, this is it. I'm doing it. This is going to be awesome. I'm going into research. I'm going to see some really cool things and see some amazing advances, and got through all the classes that were associated with lab animal medicine. Just had some core classes left and the grant ended. And so I couldn't get my associates in lab animal tech. So I was like, well, I've already done half of the vet tech classes, so I'll just transfer it into the full tech program. That's when I was like, okay, traditional vet med, I can do this. This is awesome. And back to that ER clinic, one of the clients, and this is all I was working at the dog daycare, one of the clients there was a vet intern at the ER clinic. And I had asked her about it at some point. She said, well, go ahead, apply for a reception position. This is back when we were called receptionists forever ago. And she said, well, apply and I'll give our hiring manager a referral for you, give you a reference. And so it worked that time. And I got a position there and spent, I think, almost 5 years there, working my way through reception into starting into some assisting. And then when I graduated from tech school, I went from like finishing my last day, fourth term rounds in tech school. The next week started on overnights as a credentialed tech with the ER, which was like, I'm really jumping in with both feet, going straight into overnights and ER. But again, it was a place that had great mentoring, great support. And so I was lucky enough to learn from just really, really great people, which I didn't realize at the time. It was a unicorn clinic through and through. And I didn't learn that until I left, until I realized that not everywhere was like that. But yeah, that was kind of my jump in was finally got into ER.
Yeah, and you mentioned you moved from that clinic. Was it a physical move or what encouraged that change?
Yeah. I was in Colorado. I had gotten a divorce, was not living my best life, not taking care of myself, and decided that I needed to just really take a fresh start somewhere. And I'd always been really interested in the Pacific Northwest. I'd never even been out there, had never seen it, had, just in knowing about it and seeing pictures and everything. I also wanted to go somewhere that was like maybe a day's drive from home so I could get back home pretty easily to my family. So moved to Oregon and still here in Oregon and absolutely love it here. I would say probably the best decision in my life that I've made to move out here. Really got me, I was like, okay, I got to get my life on track, got to get myself going in a positive direction, and found my now husband and have a wonderful child and an amazing network of vet people out here.
Yeah, sometimes I think we forget that a lot of our career changes and pivots and all sorts of things are from things outside of career, right? Right. We're lots of things to us. Like there's things that happen in our non-work life that are really important and impact us. And you said that was your best decision. Change is also still not easy. When it came to that was really important. How did your career changes kind of come along with that as well? You did have this, moment of fresh start. So what was it that for your career?
Yeah, it's ended up being a little disappointing in the the clinic that I went into. I went to another ER clinic and knew within the first 24 hours, so within my first shift, that it was not going to be a great fit, and I was not excited about being there. It wasn't the culture that I wanted, and then took me 8 months to actually leave. As we all tend to be like, well, I'll just see if it gets better, or this is my option for right now. So stayed there for a while and then moved to a vet school, which was also, it was good. I learned a lot there, definitely, but it just wasn't quite what I was looking for. And again, life change moved us to a larger city for my husband's internship after he finished college. And I got to experience a few more places that weren't the best and spent some more time in ER, and then finally got to move into internal medicine and worked with a fantastic doctor who I absolutely loved. We worked really great as a team. Our relationship worked really well. And we unfortunately were at a hospital that was not really great. And then she went on maternity leave. So I made the move that I swore I would never, ever, ever do when I went into general practice. And I said, I will never work in GP. I said, don't give me your healthy patients. I want your sick ones. I don't want your healthy ones. They're no fun. But it turned out to be a really, really good experience for me. I learned a lot and I grew a lot and ended up spending close to 5 years in GP and found a great clinic to work at the chunk of that with, and was really supportive through having a child and having a young baby and being able to take an very extended maternity leave, especially for us and what we consider, an extended maternity leave. I got 10 months. So it was the right place at the time. Absolutely. And I finally kind of got restless again, and there's always more to learn. Absolutely 100%. There's always more to learn in vet med. I will never say no matter where you are, there's something to learn. But I kind of felt like I was getting to the tops of being able to extend my skills. And so we decided to move again because we were in a small enough area. There wasn't a whole lot there for me for options to go to. My husband needed some more industry for him as well. So we moved to close to Portland because I was sure I was going back into research. This is what got me into vet med in the first place. It's going to be great. I'm going to love it. This is like going to kind of come back around. And the pace difference between being in ER or even GP and in research is so, so different. And I just didn't have the constant, like, go do this, now go do that, now go do that. It was just a little too slow for what I've now learned my ADHD brain needs. So that didn't quite work out as I was hoping. But due to some other outside life changes, I was able to take a step back last summer stop working for a little bit and say, what am I doing? What's right for me? In a way, I always had felt like I've been bouncing around in vet med, going from here to here to here. And I always wanted to find a spot to stay for, more than 3, 4, 5 years, really like find my niche, find my path in vet med. And I just kept feeling like I just kept missing it. Like, it's just, I know there's something there and I just kept missing it. I couldn't just land in this spot that felt like home in vet med for me. And so being able to just stop and kind of take some space and really reflect on what was important to me and what I enjoyed and all the different roles that I'd been in through vet med. And that was when, coming back again to the human animal bond, realizing, and I surprised myself when I was sitting and trying to, what do I enjoy? And I thought, I really enjoy talking to clients who are having a hard time. I really enjoyed spending time and giving them the time they needed that they typically can't get out of a vet. And really, if I was on the phone for 15 minutes with a client trying to figure out what they needed to do, what their next steps were, I was fine with that. And thankfully, I was at a clinic that was also okay with that. Be like, okay, that was a really long one. What were you talking about? But they still, supported that kind of communication. And I realized that and I went, oh, I really enjoyed people. I really enjoyed helping people. And I don't know if I ever actually said, as so many people do in vet med, I don't like people. I'm in vet med because I don't like people. I don't know if I ever said that or not, but there certainly was a period in my life that was like, no, don't give me your people. I want the animals. So it's an interesting kind of to come back to the relationship and come back to seeing how important and feeling how important that is to myself. It was a little surprising to me, but it feels right. I feel like, I said I was having a really hard time feeling like I was finding home in vet med, and it does feel like working on a relationship basis with people and building the relationship. It does feel like home.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I love how you talked about your thought process and trying to figure out who you are, what you liked, because part of this podcast is really trying to get that down for everybody so that they can find their home in vet med. And I think that some people forget that there are lots of opportunities, including veterinary technicians. We talk a lot about veterinarians and different things that veterinarians can do. And vet techs, I think sometimes they just see there's a technician, you can go to a specialty, or you can go to management. And that's kind of like the option. You started very different with, lab animal, and maybe that's it. But what do you think allowed you to think bigger and think about, okay, there's more than 3 options here for me? How did you kind of get to that moment where you were able to really open up the possibilities and take what you were learning about yourself and what you were enjoying in doing something, which we'll talk about here in a minute, that it was quite different?
Man, I tried to leave vet med. I tried a few times. I'm like, this was it. I have been hurt so bad by vet med in life. I'm doing it. I'm leaving. And I went back to school at least once, maybe to almost twice. And both times, like, no, I can't. And part of what I had found through, especially when I was actually back in school and attending, trying to pave a path out of vet med, one thing I had found was a podcast called Vet Tech Cafe that is specifically for vet techs, that is to show us that there are other possibilities, that there are so many possibilities. And I had heard so many different stories about how a technician just built their own place in vet med, basically. And they took what they wanted to do and they said, well, why can't I? Why can't I do that? So that podcast saved my career a couple of times. If it weren't for hearing all of those stories, like, okay, there is a place. It's not just this, 3 lanes. There is somewhere else I can go with this. So having that and becoming also more aware through my career of all of our challenges, like our title protection, standardizing, all of those things, and fighting for utilization. becoming more aware of that, I think also really made a difference in realizing that there is so much more that we can do. We aren't stuck to those 3 lanes. And being a credentialed vet tech is a baby type of career. Like it's new. It's still growing. There's still so much that it is going to turn into. And I have so much faith in us as a profession in building that and creating that. And that really came from listening to some of the techs that have done that and some of the people that have said, there is no ceiling. I'm going to reach for as high as I can. I'm going to do what I want to do. And so that really helped a lot. And having that mindset of, I can do something else. But without having that exposure to other techs that did that, I don't know. I don't know if I would have seen that. I don't think I would have. So paying attention, I guess, to what other people were doing.
So you're saying podcasting is no, I don't.
It does make a difference. Yeah.
Fantastic medium to further share that, right? Not only is it exists out there, but you have to sometimes show it. And on the other side, right, go explore what are some of these ideas. That's why I have my podcast. That's, I need to get some of the people from the Vet Tech Cafe on as well and share their experiences. Yeah. But I think it's a great, I did not mean to set you up. I really had forgotten about that. But that's great. And again, on top of that, you're doing self-reflection. And again, there were some things that happened in your personal life too, that kind of started to put all of this together on, you mentioned starting your own business, right? So what would that be? And so if you don't mind, you might share just at least a little bit about that personal experience that really highlighted a gap in the veterinary medicine side of things and kind of got you started on creating a business idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I had, when I moved out to Oregon from Colorado, a good friend of mine who was retired, he was kind of also in a place like, I want to leave Colorado. I just don't want to be here. And on a whim, when I came out to visit work, he had come with me the year before we ended up moving, and he absolutely fell in love with it out here. And so he said, hey, can I move with you? I said, sure, why not? That'd be great. Yes, I'm going to make a life change, and yes, I need to go do this for myself, but sure. Yeah. And so really we became family, really, absolutely family. And that was almost 9 years ago that we moved out here. And last summer he started feeling sick and finally let me take him to the hospital. It took him a long time to get there. And he had stage 4 cancer and passed away within 2.5 weeks of him finally letting me take him to the hospital. But through that whole process, the compassion of people who were not just hospice, but people who were walking the path with us through this end of life process. And he ended up in a home that was I think, what do they call them? Adult foster homes or something like that. It's a terrible name. But it was someone's house, and she provided the room, and hospice nurses came in, and he was only there for 5 days. But the amount of care and compassion that we were shown in that time was absolutely beautiful, just so impactful. And so that close experience with hospice and end of life with people, as I was sitting and reflecting, where is that for pets? Sure, we have the vet clinic, we have some mobile vets, and we have in-home euthanasia, or you need to look vet clinic, or wherever it is. Where is that end of life space where people are feeling so lonely, so helpless, where they're confused, they're already in anticipatory bereavement? Where is that help for them? And it just I just put things together from all the thoughts and all the self-reflection. I said, that's it. I'm going to do in-home hospice for people as a technician. I don't need a doctor to go in and help people with quality of life assessments, to help them with planning, to help them with education, to fill in that gap as a way of relieving some stress on vet clinics. And this is, sort of thinking about this like post-pandemic, especially where there's even more staffing issues and it's more challenges and less time for a lot of clients. Taking that pressure off of them, trying to take some of the burden from them, the emotional, figuring out what do we do, what happens, and meanwhile being somewhat of a liaison between the clinic, the vet, and the client, and trying to really just close that gap in. So I was just sitting there one day. I went, "That's it. We need this. This is such a needed thing." I was like all in before I really looked at starting my own business and really thinking about the whole picture of it. I was already all in. I think as soon as I figured out the name, I got my LLC and started rolling on everything. And then it was kind of a jump in with 2 feet.
Yeah. It is hard to start your own business. And I think that probably intimidates and deters somebody from potentially going farther into it. And you even mentioned this is a newer concept, right? Even if it sounds similar to in-home euthanasia, which is still different, right? That's not all the prep and the planning. And you've talked about some of the things you do, which is so interesting. And it's very much on the human side, right? It's like helping them understand what's happening and preparing and making sure that that quality life in that last stage of them being with their pet is such a good memory instead of one day the pet's gone, right? So with this new concept, starting any type of business, even if it's not a new concept, it can be challenging. So you're excited and you mentioned you start to realize, oh, wow, there's a lot to this. This can be hard. How did you start and what helped you get to the point where you're still running this business? You're still excited about it. It's working, it's building and growing. So that way we can just kind of help people understand, here are some steps you can start to do because you don't have to be doing this completely by yourself. There's ways to learn.
Yeah. I, kind of fumbled through figuring all of that out. Absolutely. I did, I wrote a nice introduction letter, took them to some vet clinics, and I've gotten one client out of the 20 that I dropped off that way. So stepping back and looking at that again, as far as is that really the best way to help vet clinics see how I can help them. So kind of stumbled through, realized that managing social media, I knew nothing about. I had no idea what I was doing, and found a marketing company, dog-based consulting, that is veterinary specific. And they have been so helpful in learning and branding. I had no idea what it was. I have no idea how to write a mission statement, So having help walking through all of that, I wouldn't have the media presence or the social media presence that I have if it weren't for them by any means. They've gotten me starting a blog. I'm doing these things that are really, truly, you do have to do in our life now. You can't just say, "Oh, hey, I'm running this business. Come see me." You have to have that social media presence, which was really, really hard for me. But I'm learning, and I never tried to manage finances on my own. I never tried to do the accounting on my own. I knew that was something that I would not stay on top of, and I would just create a giant mess for myself and trying to figure it out. So outsourcing that. So outsourcing, I think, is the biggest thing that I've done so far that has made it so I can focus on what is this and focus on the relationships. And now learning and seeing how, where clients are coming from, that the relationship with the vet clinic is key. Because they're the ones that are giving the diagnosis. They're the ones that are saying, we can't do anything else, or helping the clients decide they don't want to do anything else. And then the client walks out with what resources. So going in, so I'm developing lunch and learns to go in and do for clinics about hospice and what it can do for their clients, how it can support their clients, how it can take pressure off of the staff and the vets and everyone that it takes to run a vet clinic. And because I've also found that because I did decide to stop in a niche corner that is a kind of a new concept, I'm also educating clients. I'm educating general public. So it's been a slow build because of that, but it really, everything comes back to relationships all the time. And I'm finding that over and over and over and over through this whole process. It is all about the relationships. And building those is so fulfilling for myself personally, but also for the business. So that's been a really great kind of realization through all of this, is that relationships and not just networking. We say networking, like go network. It's not just networking. It's building those relationships. And that's key. It really is.
What have you found is some of the keys to building those relationships so well? And if there's something specific with the vet clinics versus the pet owners, that's good too. What are you finding? And because I think that is life, right? Is building relationships. So it's no matter what people, I think, want to do, I think that's usually a big part of it. So what have you found that it has helped you specifically in building successful relationships?
I think one of the biggest parts is being willing to open myself up to talking to, anyone and getting into a conversation with anyone, which is not who I historically have been. I'm an introvert. I don't start conversations. That's not me. But starting those conversations and then being willing to follow up and remembering to follow up and continue to say, oh, hey, do you want to go get coffee? Or find ways to interact or to find events to be at and not letting it drop. I'm so unfortunately good at starting a conversation or starting a relationship and then forgetting to text back or just letting it drift off into life. And that is the opposite. So one of the most important things that I have found is just to follow up and to make sure that I am not letting that new connection die away. And then those often open up into other ones. And that's what, that's the networking. And then following those paths as they open up and being open to something falling in your lap and being open to, oh, well, you're an interesting person. Let's chat. Let's go and coffee. And that helps so much, being willing to do that. And that has been absolutely a shift in perception for me in how I normally function. But it's been really healthy. It's been really good.
Yeah, I do understand. Like, I love people, but I'm also the introvert like you. And so sometimes it's like that initial getting started. It's like, yeah, I guess we better go to that happy hour at this event. But once you're there and you're talking, it gets a lot easier. And you're like, oh, this is fun. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also on the pet owner side, because that's also interesting. I mean, yeah, sometimes it's trying to work with a veterinary clinic who is busy and has a gazillion other things in their mind and trying to work with them on a new concept. But that when it comes to the pet owners, what have you found is that pain point that they're like, yeah, I absolutely do want support to get me through this end of life diagnosis and then the actual event. What have you found helps you, one, communicate the importance of the message where people will hire you for your services? And then in that process, what are some of the things you're noticing really help build the relationship with the pet parent during that really crucial moment between them and their pet?
Yeah. Really, really, really important to the entire process, from encouraging them to come seek out hospice service to all the way through, is keeping myself in a place where I am a safe place. It's tears, cry, tell me your story. The first thing I always say in a consultation when I sit down with a new client is, I want to know your story together. Tell me about you and Fluffy. How did you come together? Tell me what have you done in life? Where have you been? I want to know that. I want to know who they are. And I want to know who they are together, because that is the relationship that we're trying to honor, is who they are together. So being like having a table at an event and talking to the general public, just, so many people, this pet was so important to me, and letting them share their story and just being there to listen and commiserating a little bit is also really helpful sometimes. This spring, I went through it and it was just so much solidifying in, yes, this is what I should be doing. This is what the space I want to be in. I had my own two senior dogs that I had to say goodbye to. And that, having those experiences, and this was after I decided to do the whole hospice thing. And then it was like, oh, hey, I need myself for me, and seeing myself, even because for our own pets, it all goes out the door, right? You don't know anything. You don't remember anything. It's your own pet. I even said to my husband at one point, I said, I need me for myself. They're like, wait, is this the right decision? Is that? And just being someone that they are comfortable talking to, being someone for them to say, I don't know, I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know how I feel about that. And just letting them talk through it and giving them little bits and little encouragements along the way really helps deepen that relationship. Building that relationship with the client is so, so, so important. So I guess just presenting myself in that manner and meeting the public. And then also social media, trying to, as I'm learning what different types of posts get more engagement, that's always a challenge too. Trying again in all of that to be a welcoming, warm person and being, again, that safe space, that space where it's okay to feel all the emotions. It's okay to be sad. So for so long in our culture and our interactions with our pets and how it's seen from a social level, we're finally starting to see a change of pet loss is huge. Pet loss grief is just as impactful, if not more, than the loss of some people in your life. And honoring that and letting people will take bereavement days for pet loss. So we're starting to see some of that change too and that shift. So it's really trying to stay on, I guess, ride that wave with social media and really not hiding from talking about death and pet loss and chronic illness and terminal illness.
No, that's a good point, because if you think about how do you do, and I've heard people say this about in-home euthanasia too, is like, how do you do like social media posts about death? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I love your approach because you kind of come back to the story of the relationship of the person and the pet. And that people love, right? Even another pet owner can get that part. But I have also heard that bereavement over a pet can be some of the most lonely bereavement because nobody else understands your relationship with your pet. Like, people can kind of understand if your mother passes away, but it's different with a pet. And I'm glad to hear that you are seeing a shift that or the relationships with our pets, that they're becoming more important, and there's more people that start to understand that is a bigger deal than maybe a few years ago people appreciated. So I think that's good. But all the more I can see people appreciating individuals like yourself who can not only be a safe space, but an understanding space where, no, I get it. This is hard. And this is worthy of going through all of the emotions that you are going through. So having somebody to go through that time is, I think, just such a huge game changer. And I agree. I think our relationships with our pets are evolving, that they've been evolving. I think that's not something new. And I don't really see that it's going to backtrack at least not right anytime.
Yeah.
So I think this is really exciting. And you're trying to also figure out how that works with weird things like social media and marketing and all of that as well. And you have a great team behind you. And sometimes it helps just understanding, why do I like this so much? Like, why is this important to me? What are the stories that I'm seeing? And that's something that you can take and make work in these weird environments that sometimes intimidate us, like social media.
Yeah. One of the things that just kind of like, yes, this is absolutely a space that people need to fill. This gap needs to be filled, is hearing a client say, I feel like I did everything I could have because you were here to help me. And that is like, that's the end all. For people to feel like they did everything they could is so fulfilling and so gratifying is really weird word to use there, but it is so important for people to have that so that they can have a beautiful goodbye. because I absolutely believe that goodbyes can be beautiful. Absolutely. And I have had for my own, I have had awfully traumatic, horribly traumatic endings to getting to celebrate their life with a party hat and a chocolate donut standing on the dining room table. And having that spectrum, being able to see that, yes, death comes with trauma. Yes, that happens. No, we can't always decide when it's going to happen. Of course, that's life. We know that. But if we have the opportunity to create a fulfilling end, which again is such a weird way to say it, but to create an end where you can look back at it and smile and think that absolutely, yes, I am so, so deeply sad that my pet is gone. But wow, what an amazing goodbye I got to have. That is absolutely life-changing. And that changes your relationship with grief as you move forward and as you are moving through even that anticipatory treatment stage. And that's one of the things that I really try to help people with is keep them present with their pets. Help them create bucket lists. Help them do art. I've got a few different art things that we can do with them before they say goodbye to their pet so that they have the memory of making this piece of artwork with their pet before the pet's dead. Like our paw prints that we get after cremation, it's great. I love having those. But having the memory of making it with your pet and laughing, that is so much more. There's so much more behind that paw print. So things like that is what makes it just so important to me to be able to help other people through that process, because that is truly honoring the human animal bond.
Yeah, and it even made me think of kids too. Like when I was younger, I was a country kid. So a lot of our pets, they did go to the vet, but then when they were sick, a lot of times they came home in a box. And so there was like this disconnect as a kid that honestly going to the vet was a little scary when my dad was going to take a pet to the vet, because often my association was they don't come home alive. And that's really hard for a kid, especially, I mean, I ended up being a veterinarian. I kind of liked animals, so this is a big deal. And so I also see how this is an opportunity to allow everybody in the family to understand how to grieve and to have that good end of life, because what you're talking about, those are things the entire family can participate in. You can help them, explain to the kids what this means. And we're celebrating this amazing life that we've had, because that can be really hard. One, you're grieving yourself. You're worrying about your kids too. But to be able to have that space to do both, to grieve, but also have support and helping everybody else that you love in the family and that has that relationship with a pet to also kind of go through all together. I don't know. Have you experienced that where you're working with, multiple people in the family?
Yeah, there's been a few families I've worked with that have had more than just like one or two primary caregivers. And it is really, getting to watch the whole family make those memories and stay present and stay there is really, really special. And is also there, kind of facilitating those conversations and helping give parents resources. I have a 5-year-old, so I've gone through the pet loss. I've gone through the human loss with her in the last year. And I have learned so much from doing that myself as a parent. Just knowing that like having picture books that give parents the words to talk about it is huge. And having all the different resources, not only for the parents, but some of those picture books have been just as important for me as they have for my daughter. They're so wonderful. And the first time I read like The Invisible Leash, especially, I was just like bawling.
Oh,
But it gives parents those words and the ways to talk about it. And then, of course, there's other resources that I have that I can share for whatever situation it may be, whether it be, emotional support dog, whether it be the kid's first pet, and now the kid's like 25 and went through a pet loss bereavement certification course. And that helps so much in giving myself the words to use and how to navigate all of those, but also how to help other people navigate all of those and in those special specific situations. It's really helpful to have that source of knowledge. And it's like in thinking about going in and helping families, having someone come in who is not attached to the situation and to the pet and, so emotionally involved and just having them bring in the resources and the words that actually really do help, and leaving away the words that don't help, all the phrases that we know are not helpful. At least they lived a good life. At least you got those years with them. All those things that are not as helpful, and finding the other words to use is really helpful in helping families move through that. So yeah, going through that with my own kid, man, that helps a lot. It's there, it's in the abilities to help others. Yeah.
Yeah. The books that you're referring to, I'd love to share those links and let people see those and use those as resources. But as you're talking about just knowing the words to say, I think you could do a CE on that for the veterinary team as well, because sometimes we don't always know what to say or say the best things in those situations. Back to your a liaison between the veterinary team and the pet owner, you do have a really important role, and everything that you have learned being a veterinary technician will help you there because one, you understand what the diagnosis means. And so if they need more understanding of that and to feel more comfortable in the decisions they've made, you can be there for that. And then, advocating for the pet owner too, like it's just a very unique situation that, again, I just want to highlight. In veterinary medicine, no matter what your role is, you gain so many skills that can be applicable in so many different areas. So finding the home, or like you described it, where you can take those skills and live it out in a way that also combines your own personal values and passion and talents, I think that's the part where it gets so exciting to be part of this big picture of veterinary medicine.
I absolutely agree. And as our picture of vet med grows and there's more directions that people can go, it's so fascinating and exciting to see where people take their career, what they do, how they find their spot. It's just that relationship again, seeing people figure out what works for them and what makes them tick is just coming back to, we are all individuals who need fulfillment. We all are individuals who need to find our place and to find our path. And it's important to be able to do that. And remembering that no matter where someone is on their path, whether they're 30 years in and they're like, oh man, I have been a tech on the floor for 30 years. I can't do this anymore. They don't leave vet med. They don't leave that 30 years of knowledge behind is really, really important. Because when someone who's got that much knowledge is like, well, I'm done in vet med. What else can I do? I can't work on the floor anymore. That's a huge loss. It's a huge loss to the vet community. It's a huge loss to clients and to people, to the general public, to lose that person from vet med. So whatever we can do collectively in vet med to keep people here with us and make it past that 5-year statistical mark, right? That is so important. And I hope that we keep finding more and more ways to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had someone not long ago. I think it was longer than 30 years in vet med. Like they had been in vet med for a long time as a veterinary technician, and they weren't ready to be done, but they knew that they could not physically do the clinic job, and they really had no idea. But they knew they were just not ready to leave, and so they asked, "What are options for vet techs that been in this industry and just can't do the clinical floor anymore?" And we started chatting about, well, what do you like? What are you interested in? And I mentioned writing because they just cannot do very much physically. And they got so excited about that. There's like, did you know I actually thought about being a writer earlier in my career? And they just got so excited about putting those things together. And so, yes, absolutely. I hope we only continue to broaden our perspective of what could be for people in veterinary medicine again. And so thank you for letting me share your story as a part of that and encouraging others to do the same. And so I do like to end with at least one final question. And that is, what is something that you are very grateful for right now?
Right now, I am very grateful, and it's going to come back to vet med because I just did a week-long field clinic trip. I am incredibly grateful for the ability to bring vet care to people who don't have access to it, and to be able to work with an organization very rural area veterinary services that I just worked with. The opportunity, and this also feeds into my personal life, that I have the most amazing partner who is so supportive. And through all of this, like this whole starting my own business, he's like, you can do it. I know you can. I know that you can. So the opportunity to bring that care to people who can't access it, I'm so thankful for that. And I'm so thankful for a partner who stands behind everything that I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it.
I hope you enjoyed this fascinating veterinary story. We can make an impact in so many places. Check out the show notes for lots of resources. Please make sure you are subscribed on your podcast app, subscribe on the YouTube channel, and follow me on LinkedIn, where I hang out the most. You can contact me on LinkedIn, on the website at vetlifereimagined.com. And brand new is that you can text me. To send me a text message, find the link at the top of the show notes below that says, send us a text message. I want to thank our longtime sponsors, Fire Consulting and Will Hughes, who support the podcast over on our hosting platform, Buzzsprout. You can support the podcast too. Just check out the show notes for a link. And I hope to see you next time on Vet Life Reimagined.